"Chief Ava, the state needs you." That was the last thing I ever expected to hear. Especially from the governor. Not when my own family had told me I wasn't cut out for greatness. Not when they'd already written me off years ago. See, I grew up in a family where heroism was measured in gallons of water and charred boots. My dad served over 30 years in Austin Fire Department, 3-time Medal of Valor recipient. My mom trained cadets in wildfire strategy. My younger sister Chloe fast-tracked straight into command at 27. Everyone in our family wore a badge except me. I was the wasted potential. The girl who walked away from the fire academy halfway through year 1. "Some people are just better suited for desk jobs," Mom said with that soft tone that cuts way deeper than yelling. That sentence stuck to me like ash in my throat. What they didn't understand was, I wasn't quitting the mission. I just didn't believe fighting fires always meant dragging a hose into flames. I believed tech could save lives just as much as brute force. But in my family, tech meant tinkering. Drones? A toy. My YouTube channel with wildfire mapping tutorials? Cute hobby, until Chloe's big promotion ceremony. That morning I got a call from Mom. "No, how are you?" "No, we're excited to see you." "Just, your sister's being honored in Sacramento. It's formal. Try not to wear something weird." I flew out, sat 3 rows behind the rest of the family, and listened as they praised Chloe's leadership like it had saved the whole Pacific Northwest. They introduced me, if you can call it that, as her older sister who works with computers. And then everything changed. You're gonna want to hear what happened next. Because when the flames hit the fan, they didn't call the firefighters. They called me. Stay with me. This story isn't about fire. It's about family, failure, and proving everyone wrong in front of the entire damn state. They called me at exactly 11 o'clock. The ballroom still echoed with applause for Chloe when my phone lit up. Sacramento Emergency Operations. I nearly sent the call to voicemail. Then a strained voice said, "Miss Ava Miller? A crown fire is bearing down on South Natomas Elementary. Thermal cameras are useless in this smoke. The governor watched your drone video and wants you on site. Now." Guests polished with medals kept smiling, clueless that a kindergarten was minutes from disaster. I leaned to Mom. "They need me." She adjusted her pearls. "Ava, sit down. Don't turn Chloe's day into a spectacle." That did it. I marched out, heels ticking like a stopwatch, into air that smelled of burning cedar. The sky was bruised orange. Ash drifted like gray snow. A black SUV skidded to a stop. Governor Reyes stepped out, soot on his cheeks, jacket in his fist. He locked eyes with me, not Chloe, raised a firefighter salute and said, "Chief Ava, the state needs your eyes in the sky." The title stunned me, but my reply was steady. "Yes." Inside the command rig, maps lagged behind the flames by city blocks. I tethered my laptop, overrode the no-fly zone my family once mocked, and launched 3 drones I had packed for a tech demo. Dreams pivot quick. We set up in a vacant baseball field. Folding tables became launch pads. Cadet volunteers became spotters. In 5 breaths, the first drone pierced the smoke, its thermal lens painting live crimson lines. Data poured in. My software warned the fire would swing east and trap evacuation buses on Garden Highway. I patched the feed to the field commander and steered engines down a safer road, until every screen went black. Someone had jammed public safety frequencies for 2 miles. Without telemetry, the drones would fall and kids would lose their window. When software fails, go hardware. I grabbed my last prototype, a carbon frame quad with an analog transmitter, tuned it to a frequency so old Dad called it antique, and launched blind. The picture returned, ghostly but clear. Chloe rushed up. "Airspace is restricted." Her voice held more fear than scorn. I pointed at the dead monitors. "Either we improvise or we watch the news count bodies." She swallowed and handed me her captain's radio. Static chatter revealed crews sent in circles. Sabotage, not glitch. I thought of Deputy Hank, the guy who mocked plastic mosquitoes. Rage could wait, kids could not. Wind shifted. The corridor narrowed. I dove the quad, releasing a string of retardant capsules investors had called cute. Teal plumes starved the flames. "Evac buses roll," I barked. Engines roared. Yellow buses crawled from the smoke like ghosts into daylight. Cheers erupted. The governor squeezed my shoulder. "Battery dying. 1 minute left." I aimed down main drain canal, where dry brush waited to ignite. With the last spark, I triggered the drone self-dump, drenching the tinder. Children were safe, buses rolling south, but the jammers remained. I marked their coordinates and passed them to troopers. Chloe's eyes widened, she knew the address. She didn't say Hank's name. The sky glowed dull red, yet relief spread like cool rain. For the first time I felt taller than every badge in that city. Somewhere back in the ballroom, the orchestra probably struck up another march. They had no idea the real battle had unfolded on a dusty diamond, where laptops and runaway propellers rewrote decades of family hierarchy. Part 3. That is where the reckoning begins, because saving lives is one thing. Facing the family who almost let them burn is another. Stick around. So there I was, standing in a dust-choked diamond while the governor's handprint still glowed on my shoulder, when the radio crackled. State police have the jammer. Name's Hank Preston. Taken into custody. My heart should have leapt. Instead it sank because Hank wasn't some faceless villain. He was Chloe's most trusted deputy, practically family by barbecue invite standards. Minutes later, a convoy of fire engines rolled back to the ballroom. Their sirens were off, but the tension screeched louder than any horn. I followed, cheeks streaked with ash, drone case clutched like a championship trophy. Chloe met me at the side entrance. Her hair, once parade perfect, now hung in smoky strands. Eyes rimmed red, not from soot but from shock. I didn't know, she whispered. I swear. I believe you, I said, and meant it. You can fake a salute, but you can't fake terror for children you've never met. Inside, brass bands stalled mid-note as the governor strode to the podium again. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced. Today Sacramento witnessed courage in stereo. Battalion Captain Chloe Miller led ground operations. Chief Ava Miller commanded the skies. Together, they saved 137 students. My family's heads whipped toward me. Dad blinked like his helmet visor just shattered. Mom's lips trembled, forming a silent chief. The governor motioned us forward. Chloe walked first, boots echoing on the parquet floor, then paused and beckoned me to join. Cameras flashed. Reporters shoved microphones. One asked, "Chief, what do you say to the people who called your drones toys?" I smiled, voice steady. Toys teach kids to dream. Dreams write tomorrow's playbook. Today those toys played for keeps. Then came the pinning. Chloe unfastened her fresh captain badge, a badge she had earned with sweat and sleepless drills, and pressed it over the burn mark on my jacket where solder had singed the fabric. "Sisters share wins," she said, loud enough for microphones, soft enough for childhood. Audience members surged to their feet. Even Mom clapped, palms pink from force, tears glistening. Dad stepped closer, extended a massive, shaky hand. "Your grandfather would have loved your bird's-eye view," he muttered. That single sentence carried decades of pride we never voiced at dinner. But victories ring hollow if rot stays hidden, so I cleared my throat. "Governor, there's more. The sabotage wasn't an accident." Gasps rippled. I explained Hank's fear that tech would replace tradition. "It won't," I declared. "Tech extends tradition. It keeps firefighters alive to hug their kids after shift." Heads nodded, some skeptically, most thoughtfully. The governor ordered a task force to integrate drone units statewide, pairing every veteran with a rookie pilot. Progress signed in real time. After formalities, Dad insisted on family dinner. We squeezed into our rental SUV, still smelling like campfire. Mom broke the silence. "Ava, I owe you an apology." She reached back, squeezed my knee. "Not everyone is meant to be heroic the old way. You showed a new way." The word heroic felt different now. Less like a measuring stick, more like a shared quilt. We ate at a roadside diner jammed with evacuees. Kids we'd rescued colored paper firefighter hats. One little girl tugged my sleeve. "Miss Drone Lady, when I grow up I want to fly robots too." I knelt, offered her a cracked rotor blade as a souvenir. "Start building," I said. "And don't let anyone call it a toy." Chloe slid into the booth, a pie slice in each hand. "Chief, you gotta try boysenberry. It's legendary." For the first time in years we laughed without rivalry. Just sisters under neon lights, sharing pie and battle scars. Before leaving I recorded a quick vlog from the parking lot, phone propped against a water jug. "If you're watching," I told the lens, "remember this. People will label you ordinary until the moment you prove otherwise. Don't wait for permission. Build. Fly. Fight fires no one else can see." I paused, hearing distant choppers humming over the dark valley. And when your chance comes, answer faster than flames can spread. I hit upload. The thumbnail showed Chloe's badge on my soot-stained jacket. Title: Drone Lady vs. Wildfire. How Tech Outsmarted Fear. As the view counter ticked upward, a warm breeze carried the ash away, and somewhere behind us the fire line flickered, then faded, then went dark. By sunrise, my quick parking lot vlog had rocketed up the trending list. Views climbed faster than any siren I had ever heard. Comments poured in, volunteers begging to learn drone tactics, parents thinking, "Miss Drone Lady," and of course, a handful of skeptics growling that robots were killing real jobs. I was still wiping powdered sugar from a boysenberry crust when the governor's chief of staff called. "Madam Chief," she said, words that still felt like a borrowed jacket, "the governor wants you in the Capitol at 10 sharp. Task force kickoff. Press will be there." I glanced at my smoke-stained jeans. "I don't own anything Capitol ready." "Wear the soot," she replied. "It tells the truth." 2 hours later, I walked into a marble rotunda that smelled of lemon polish and nerves. Behind the podium stood Governor Reyes, Chloe in uniform, and a half-dozen union leaders who looked like they had been chewing gravel since dawn. Dad was tucked in their row, dress blues freshly pressed, hands massive and motionless. Mom sat beside him, palms folded like she was bracing for turbulence. The governor opened with statistics: wildfires tripling over the past decade, billions lost, lives shattered. Each fact felt like a hammer, yet he delivered them calm and steady, building to the nail he meant me to drive. He gestured for me. I swallowed, stepped forward, and spoke without slides or scripts. I told them how tech was not a substitute for courage but an amplifier. How a 1-pound carbon frame and a $70 thermal sensor had outflown an 8-ton engine choking on zero visibility. How every veteran's instinct could be extended, not erased, by a bird's-eye view. A burly union rep named Morales crossed his arms. "And when the battery dies, Chief? When code crashes?" I met his stare. "Same thing that happens when a hydrant runs dry, you improvise. I'm not asking you to trust silicon over skin. I'm asking you to give both a seat on the rig." Murmurs rippled. Dad's gaze never left me, but his jaw unclenched. That felt like a small sunrise on its own. The governor hammered the point home. A joint drone and hose unit would deploy statewide, tactical call sign Phoenix. Guess who he tapped to build it? 1 week later, we were on a scrubby hillside north of Folsom Lake for the first live drill. Summer heat baked the soil so hard my boots left no print. Chloe commanded engine crews at the base. I led a ragtag flight deck on the ridge, rookie coders, seasoned pilots, even 2 retired snowjumpers curious about joysticks. Dad arrived in an old pickup, off-duty but still wearing his battered helmet, maybe for luck, maybe for stubborn pride. He stayed near the tailgate, arms folded, silent. The drill whistle blew. Chloe's crew ignited a controlled burn that leapt higher than predicted, pushed by a surprise gust. Perfect test or perfect public failure. Radios crackled. Spot fires beyond line 2. I launched the primary drone, nicknamed Liberty by a cadet who loved history. Liberty's feed beamed to tablets slung around firefighters' necks. They could now see flame tongues curling behind them, flanking their hoses. Chloe barked new orders before the smoke even reached her goggles. Crews pivoted, knocking down embers that would have turned into a wall of fire in minutes. Halfway in, a rotor warning flashed, dust clog. Morales, sweating under a hard hat, shouted, "Here comes that dead battery sermon." I grinned, handed him a spare drone the weight of a softball. "Then you fly the backup, Captain." He blinked, fingers clumsy over the controller. But the little craft lifted, steady as his heartbeat. When his thermal view painted a hidden hotspot, his curse of amazement carried clear across the ridge. By sundown, the hillside smoldered but held. Phoenix 1 drill, success. Chloe blew her whistle, signaling stand down. Applause rose from both ridges, as rough and genuine as gravel tumbling from a loader. Dad approached, helmet tucked under his arm. Deep creases framed eyes that had watched more roofs collapse than I cared to imagine. "You changed the playbook," he said, voice gravel soft. "I've spent 40 years waiting for something that might keep crews alive longer. Didn't know it would come from my kid who plays with robots." I laughed, a shake in my chest I had not felt since grade school. "They're toys that grew teeth, Dad." He reached into his pocket, pulled out his old dog tags, edges worn smooth. "Take these. Not for luck, you already have enough of that. For weight. So you remember the crew on the line every time you code. The tags felt impossibly heavy and impossibly right around my neck. That night, Chloe and I sat on the hood of the pickup, legs dangling, while Mom handed out thermos cups of sweet tea. The sky above Folsom was bizarrely clear, stars pricking through like someone had punched holes in dark paper. "Phoenix is yours to captain," Chloe said. "I'll stick to engines and chainsaws." "Deal," I said, then raised my tea like a toast. To new ways and old guts, Mom cleared her throat. And to sisters admitting when they're scared, she added, eyes flicking to Chloe then me. "I was terrified drone rotors would spin my girls apart. Turns out they stitched you closer." We sat silent for a moment, listening to crickets, faraway sirens, and the drone of one last prototype still circling as an autonomous lookout. I thought of that elementary school, of kids coloring firefighter hats, of a little girl pocketing a cracked rotor blade like treasure. Tomorrow the headlines would argue about funding, unions, and modernization. Tomorrow trolls would tweet that I was lucky that the wind simply blew in our favor. Fine. Tomorrow could shout itself hoarse. Tonight I tasted smoke and sweet tea on the same breath and decided that was the flavor of change. And if you're still watching, remember, ordinary is a label other people paste on you when they can't see your runway. Fold those letters into a paper plane and launch it past their horizon. Because somewhere out there a fire is already starting, and the world is going to need every set of wings it can get. The morning after the drill, my phone was already buzzing before the first sip of coffee. The video I'd posted in a parking lot less than 2 days ago had exploded. Millions of views. Thousands of comments. I wasn't just drone lady anymore. I was trending with hashtags I didn't create and nicknames I wasn't sure I deserved. One read Skyfire Queen. Another just said Chief Ava, period. Before I could fully process that, the governor's office called. The Appropriations Committee wanted a live demo. If they liked what they saw, Phoenix would go statewide. If they didn't, well, all of this momentum would vanish like smoke on pavement. 2 days later, I stood in front of lawmakers who hadn't seen a wildfire up close in years. Some probably never. They asked their questions, polite on the surface, sharp underneath. One senator asked why we should trade tried-and-true tools for glorified toys. Another raised an eyebrow and asked what happens when my flying gadgets fail mid-disaster. I answered with facts. One drone costs a few $100s. One fire engine $500,000. My team's thermal maps helped save over 100 children in less than 5 minutes. Faster, safer, smarter. But they weren't moved by numbers, they wanted proof. So we gave it to them. On the Capitol lawn, Chloe ran a ground drill while I launched Liberty. A sudden gust pushed her off course. Just as I gripped the controls tighter, Morales, yes, the same guy who once mocked me, stepped beside me and called out instructions like he'd been flying for years. With his help, we adjusted and rebalanced. The drone steadied, the feed lit up, and the entire drill unfolded exactly how it was supposed to. Precise. Clean. Efficient. Back inside, they voted. The bill passed. Barely. But it passed. We didn't have time to celebrate. That same afternoon, an earthquake rattled the northern counties. A small blaze broke out near a senior care center in Auburn. Engines were delayed. Air support was grounded. There was no one else, so we went. Me, Chloe, Morales, Dad, we loaded up every drone we could carry and drove out in a beat-up truck through cracked roads. By the time we arrived, the fire was inches from disaster. Liberty took flight again, this time without ceremony or audience, just purpose. The drones mapped the flames in seconds. Chloe coordinated the evacuation. Morales and Dad rigged hose lines with a volunteer crew. Scout 1 lost signal. Scout 2 dipped low and held just long enough to mark the last hotspot. Liberty dropped her final retardant capsule just as the fire curled around the east lawn. We bought enough time. Not one life was lost. Afterwards, Senator Whitlock showed up. Same guy who voted no. He shook my hand, admitted he was wrong, and walked away without waiting for a photo op. That's how I knew it was real. That night, we sat on the tailgate of Dad's old truck, watching smoke drift through a red-stained sky. Chloe passed me a thermos of sweet tea. Morales cracked a joke about getting drone pilot certified. Even Dad smiled, and in that quiet, I realized something important. The biggest fire we ever fight isn't the one in the grass or trees. It's the one inside, the fear of being underestimated, the heat of being dismissed, the pressure to prove yourself before someone else defines you. But fire doesn't get to decide your name. Neither does family, or government, or Twitter. You do. So whatever you're building, flying, sketching, dreaming, don't wait until they believe. Start now. Let them laugh. Let them doubt. And And when your moment comes, answer faster than the flames. The quake fire near Auburn should have been the last curveball of the season, but California never reads the memo. For weeks later, lightning cracked across the Coast Range, dumping sparks instead of rain. By dawn, a chain of blazes, later christened the Diablo Complex, was chewing through redwood canyons and edging toward 500,000 acres of vineyard, pasture, and small-town roofs. State Command needed Phoenix at full scale yesterday. We had pilots but not enough gear. Funding bills moved slower than flames, and procurement red tape was strangling progress. While committee clerks argued over line items, I was soldering antennas on my apartment balcony. Chloe commandeered an unused National Guard hangar as our staging hub. Morales called in every union rep who had once sneered at drones and now wanted a seat in the cockpit. Dad drove the pickup back and forth across the valley, hauling boxes of donated batteries like they were newborn calves. 2 days into Diablo, a hotshot crew radioed that they were cut off near Devil's Spine Ridge. Smoke columns reached 2,000 feet, making helicopters useless. Ground engines couldn't climb the shale switchbacks in time. The ridge map on my tablet looked like a cardiac arrest monitor. Governor Reyes broke protocol and rang my cell directly. "Chief," he said, voice raw with caffeine and dread. "If Phoenix can't reach them, no one will." So we rolled. The convoy looked less like a task force and more like a county fair parade. Pickup beds stacked with Pelican cases, an old school bus packed with volunteers, Morales riding shotgun while live-streaming logistics advice to anyone with a toolbox. Chloe led the ground element, her SUV plastered with hand-drawn Phoenix decals from school kids who had learned the logo faster than their multiplication tables. On the ridge approach, the wind was hot enough to blister paint. The sky was the color of rusted steel. I launched Liberty Mark III, then Scout 3 and Scout 4, both assembled from spare parts and hope. Thermal images painted the inferno in violent crimson. The stranded crew had retreated to a granite outcrop, ringed by brush that would ignite within 30 minutes. We needed an aerial drop, but tankers were busy miles away. My only option was a prototype, a heavy-lift octocopter nicknamed Atlas, capable of carrying 50 pounds of payload, if its unfinished firmware behaved. Dad eyed the wobbling frame. "Looks like a lawn chair strapped to propellers," he muttered. But he helped load fire-retardant spheres anyway. Atlas lifted, motors howling like parade drums. At 200 feet the telemetry spiked. Gusts ricocheted off the canyon walls, nudging the craft sideways. For a heartbeat I felt every doubt ever tossed at me. Dropout, toy tinkerer, lucky shot. I remembered my own voice from the vlog. Answer faster than the flames. So I did. Manual override. Gentle pulses on the stick, small as guiding a toddler's first bike. Atlas steadied, crawled forward, and reached the hot zone. I triggered the release. Retardant orbs burst in teal clouds, coating the brush in a chemical blanket. Smoke plumes thinned. The thermal feed cooled from violent red to sullen amber. Chloe radioed a tentative cheer, but the celebration lasted seconds. A downdraft slammed Atlas, snapping a propeller. The octocopter lurched, spiraling toward the outcrop where the firefighters huddled. I killed throttles on one side, dumping weight so the craft tumbled into a ravine instead of their heads. Metal screeched against stone, then silence. One drone sacrificed, 8 lives saved. Fair trade. Phoenix ground teams battered their way up a goat trail, hoses slung like bandoliers. Morales manned a portable pump, muscles flexing against the line pressure. Dad anchored a relay, shouting cadence counts learned in Fire Academy decades earlier. By the time water hit the ridge, flames met soaked vegetation, hissed and surrendered. Night fell purple and bruised. The rescued hotshot stood in a semicircle, soot-masked, eyes wide with the kind of gratitude too tired for words. One of them handed me a scorched patch from his uniform. "We don't give these up easy," he said. "But your lawn chair earned it." Back at the hangar, reporters swarmed, but this time they chased every member of the team, from the cadet tightening bolts to Morales, who bragged that he now kept a flight log beside his union card. Whitlock sent an after-hours voicemail. "Sometimes toys grow teeth. Consider me bitten." In legislative speak, that was a standing ovation. Yet my mind wasn't on applause. Atlas lay in shards on a mechanic's bench. We needed sturdier frames, redundant blades, smarter code. Diablo would rage for weeks. The climate graphs promised new demons next season. I drafted a midnight email to aerospace labs and community colleges, asking for partnerships, open-source firmware, student interns hungry to fight fires with keyboards. By sunrise, replies flooded in, professors eager, startups offering prototypes, high school robotics teams pledging weekend builds. While inbox pings stacked up, Chloe walked in carrying fresh coffee and a folded newspaper. Phoenix made the front page, but she covered the headline with her palm. "Mom's coming," she said. "She's bringing the church ladies. And pie." I blinked. Pie. Apparently, if your kid commands half the airspace, the proper response is carbohydrates. Chloe's grin was lopsided, equal parts pride and exhaustion. The church caravan rolled up an hour later. Aproned women unloaded tins of apple crumble and trays of lasagna onto workbenches cluttered with circuit boards. Mom pressed a fork into my hand. "Eat," she ordered. Heroes don't run on solder. Between bites, I noticed the little girl from the Auburn rescue, rotor blades still strung around her neck like a medal. She whispered that her science class wanted to build mini drones for wildlife search teams. I promised a Phoenix patch for every prototype they finished. Dad clinked a mug to get attention. "Listen up," he rumbled. "We used to say the dragon of wildfire can't be killed, only chased. Today my daughter and this motley crew clipped its wings. Tomorrow we chase again. But we'll chase smarter, fly higher, and bring everyone home." Silence, then cheers loud enough to shake dust from rafters. Later, alone beneath buzzing fluorescent lights, I set Atlas's broken propeller on my workbench beside Grandpa's dog tags. Plastic and steel, past and future. I pulled out a marker and wrote across the blade, "Ordinary is overrated." Then I hung it on the wall where every pilot could see. Because Phoenix wasn't a fleet of drones anymore. It was a promise stitched from carbon fiber, courage, and sheer stubborn hope. A promise that when the world catches fire, whether in forest, heart, or committee room, we'll rise, wings humming, ready to answer faster than the flames. Diablo finally bled out after 23 relentless days, but victory tasted like smoke-stained coffee, bitter, thin, gone before you could enjoy it. While crews unrolled black hose and politicians rolled out bigger promises, the jet stream carried trouble east. 40-mile winds slammed Nevada, stoking fresh ignitions that threatened Lake Tahoe's south shore. Phoenix had been born a California experiment. Now governors from 2 neighboring states were on the hotline asking if a toy fleet could cross state lines faster than federal aid forms. I should have felt proud. Instead, I felt the weight of a carbon fiber crown tightening around my temples. Liberty Mark III was down to 1 motor. Atlas lay in shards, signature scrawled across a broken blade. We were improvising innovation at the pace of disaster, and somewhere in that tailspin I realized scale is just another word for sprinting uphill with heavier gear. News crews shadowed our every step, which meant every stumble became headline fodder. One anchor joked that Phoenix was MacGyver with a Wi-Fi password. Social media loved it. Procurement officers hated it. The state comptroller froze half the budget until we could prove durability. She demanded a stress test in 3 days, live broadcast, full telemetry, 0 room for luck. Chloe met me outside the hangar, sunlight bouncing off soot-polished windshield glass. "We can't fly half-broken drones in front of lawmakers," she said. "We need new hardware." I reminded her that purchase orders were trapped in a labyrinth of forms stamped urgent by people who've never held a hose at 2 in the morning. Chloe caught my eye and tipped her head toward the parking lot. 2 charter buses wheezed to a halt, doors folding open. Out poured students, middle school robotics clubs from Auburn, Folsom, Rancho Cordova. Kids I'd promised patches for prototypes. They carried shoeboxes, storage bins, odd-shaped duffels. One teacher thrust a permission slip into my hand and said, "They skip field day for this. Better make it worth the absence note." Inside, benches disappeared beneath printed circuit boards, candy-colored propellers, and 3D-printed chassis. The air smelled of solder and bubblegum. Morales walked in, eyebrows climbing his forehead. "Are we starting an Air Force or a lemonade stand?" he asked. Dad shrugged. "Smartest engine company I ever saw was built out of scrap steel and teenagers on a dare," he said. "Let him cook." We paired each student with a veteran. A 7th grader named Maya dissected Liberty's failing motor while a retired captain nicknamed Grumpy explained torque curves like bedtime stories. A lanky 8th grader, Leo, offered a firmware patch, then proved it by booting an augmented reality overlay that painted invisible wind currents across the hangar walls in neon blue. Even Morales gaped. The stress test morning dawned electric. Legislators, reporters, union brass, they all gathered at an abandoned airstrip outside Sacramento. The comptroller, hairsprayed to hurricane resilience, clicked across the tarmac like a drill sergeant of budgets. "Chief Miller," she said, "your toys ready?" I answered with a nod, but my stomach pitched. 5 new drones, child-built, vet-approved, sat on folding tables like baby birds unsure of their wings. We named them after constellations: Orion, Cassiopeia, Draco, Lyra, and Perseus. Each frame carried redundant motors, dual batteries, and Maya's custom ceramic heat shields painted school bus yellow. The kids watched from the bleachers, fists clutching Phoenix patches like lottery tickets. Whistle blew. Orion launched first, projector beaming Leo's wind current overlay onto a giant screen so officials could see the invisible push and pull that pilots usually feel in their bones. Cassiopeia followed, dragging a sensor pod heavier than her own frame, yet she held altitude like a hummingbird on espresso. Draco and Lyra executed synchronized sweeps, mapping temperature spikes in real time. The comptroller's tablet pinged faster than a bingo hall. Then Perseus climbed. At 200 feet, he began a scripted failure. One motor intentionally stalled to prove redundancy. The craft wobbled, corrected, and kept rising, 3 blades singing defiance against gravity. The bleachers erupted. The kids yelled as if Perseus were a varsity quarterback breaking tackles on homecoming night. Even the comptroller's lips twitched, almost a smile. Whistle again. Tests complete. Not one dropout, not one telemetry blind spot. Chloe exhaled hard enough to fog her sunglasses. Dad murmured, "Looks like the Dragon just got GPS tagged." But drama hunts hope the way fire hunts oxygen. That afternoon, an anonymous blog leaked internal emails, half-truths spliced with doctored screenshots, claiming Phoenix was siphoning funds from traditional departments. Headlines pivoted: drone darling or budget bandit. Union phone lines lit up with backlash led by a rival battalion chief who never forgave me for outranking him over Wi-Fi. Morales slammed his fist on the break room table. Sabotage again. Chloe paced, boots echoing. I stared at the article's pixelated evidence and spotted a telltale artifact I'd seen in my drone footage forensics. The metadata tag was 2 shades off, a signature of a specific deepfake app. The rival chief wouldn't have known that, but his tech consultant cousin would. We had fire to fight on the ridge called public perception, and our hose was truth. I drafted a response video, borrowing Leo's augmented reality overlay to lift words off the screen, literal transparency. Maya narrated code commits showing budget lines open-sourced in real time. The rival battalion chief doubled down on air, brandishing a printed screenshot. Within 2 hours, internet sleuths matched the artifact pattern to the cousin's previous deepfake prank tutorials. The scheme collapsed like wet cardboard. Public opinion boomeranged. Hashtags morphed into Phoenix Rising and Kids Code Fires Out. Donations flowed, audience-funded, no red tape. Enough to rebuild Atlas with aerospace-grade arms and to seed community workshops across the state. That evening, under hangar fluorescents humming like distant bees, the kids asked if they could fly a night patrol, just in case Diablo's embers dream of a comeback. I glanced at FAA guidelines, hesitated, then saw Dad nod. Teach M responsibility with the keys, or hand M over later and pray, he whispered. Orion and Cassiopeia lifted into a velvet sky freckled with stars. On the monitor, their routes traced protective circles around nearby foothills, each loop locking another latch on a weary state's anxiety. The console clock crept past midnight. I realized it marked exactly 1 year since Mom told me not everyone is meant to be heroic. I pulled out Grandpa's dog tags, rubbed the ridges, felt the promise inside cold metal. Ordinary had been a comfort blanket I never asked for. Phoenix burned it away and stitched a parachute out of possibility. If that parachute sometimes doubled as a slingshot, well, forward is forward. So here we are, veterans, rookies, kids with solder burns, bureaucrats learning to cheer. Fires will come again, I'm certain as sunrise. But now when they crackle through headlines, 1,000 young minds will lean over their laptops and whisper, "Challenge accepted," and the sky wide, stubborn, infinite will fill with wings we haven't even named yet, all of them answering faster than the flames. Morning slipped in through the hangar skylights like a polite guest, and for the first time in weeks no one was shouting incoming. Instead I heard soft whistles, Leo teaching Maya how to code wind shear compensation while Orion drifted lazy circles overhead. It felt almost peaceful, which is usually nature's way of winding up a haymaker. The hit came as an email ping. Subject line, Interstate Mutual Aid Directive. Fire seeded by the same lightning front that birthed Diablo had jumped state lines overnight. Oregon's coastal forests were burning toward small towns, and Washington was bracing for ember storms. Federal Incident Command wanted Phoenix to spearhead a tri-state response, 48 hours to mobilize. My first thought was pure pride, the second was panic. We had kids on summer break, veterans on pension paperwork, and a fleet barely older than their paint jobs. 48 hours felt like a dare written in gasoline. I gathered the crew. We just stress tested for 1 state, I said. Now they want 3. The room went quiet until Morales cracked his knuckles. Then we build in triplicate, he declared. Dad grinned like someone had tossed him his favorite wrench. We split into squads. The kids handled firmware patches, stamping each new branch with names of Pacific Northwest creatures: salmon, elk, timberwolf. Veterans drafted flight plans, mapping valleys they'd only driven on vacation. Chloe cornered supply officers, trading every favor she'd banked since academy days. Even the comptroller pitched in, approving emergency releases while muttering that the paperwork would give her night terrors. 46 hours later, a convoy rolled north, a mix of guard flatbeds, borrowed farm trailers, and one church van painted with cartoon drones by Leo's little sister. I rode shotgun beside Chloe, nursing coffee that tasted like hope and motor oil. When we crossed into Oregon, the sky looked bruised purple, and the air carried that outlaw campfire smell which says rules are suspended until further notice. Central Command was a high school gym in Ashland. Cots lined the basketball court. White bards bled marker ink. Outside, engines idled like impatient horses. The local incident chief, Callahan, greeted us with the worn smile of someone holding the door against a storm. "Glad you made it, Chief Ava," he said. "We have 2 critical fronts. Northside threatens a timber mill, jobs and tax base. South front's creeping toward a wildlife rehab center with over 200 animals. Economy versus innocent lives. An impossible coin flip." I asked for the latest satellite pass. The North Flames were angrier. But wind models showed a sudden shift could trap the rehab center in less than 3 hours. We hit south first, I decided. Callahan nodded without argument, the kind of trust forged by desperation. We staged on a ridgeline strewn with volcanic rock. I launched Timberwolf, Orion, and Perseus, 2 new bodies, same stubborn spirit. Kids back home monitored telemetry on a group video call, cheering each good packet like a touchdown. Thermal views painted the rehab center in pale gold, and the encroaching fire in molten orange. We had a narrow corridor, maybe 600 yards, to carve a shield. Timberwolf dropped retardant pods in a zipper pattern, each burst of teal cutting heat by precious degrees. Ground crews followed the glowing path, widening it with hoses and shovels. For 10 minutes the plan held. Then a lateral gust, coastal wind meeting canyon draft, spat flaming pine cones over our line like artillery. Flames torched an equipment shed. Scared raccoons scattered in all directions. Chloe cursed over the radio. "We need eyes lower than tree crowns." Perseus 2 answered, dipping beneath the canopy where GPS winked out. I switched to manual and flew by feel, eyes on a flickering grayscale feed. Smoke blurred everything but heat signatures. 1, 2, 3 small mammals hugging the base of a cedar, boxed in by fire. I throttled forward, triggered the drone's microsprayer. A jury-rigged garden pump Leo insisted would totally work. Water mist hissed, dampening a semicircle. The critters bolted through, tails on fire but bodies alive. Perseus 2's battery alarm screamed, but the craft limped back over the new line before collapsing in a clearing, motors wheezing like old accordions. Ground teams surged, finished what the drones began, and by dusk the south front lay smoldering. Callahan radioed the mill status. North line had held thanks to the windbreak we predicted. No homes lost, no animals left behind. For once the ledger balanced. Later, camp kitchen stew steaming in my cup. I stood beneath unfamiliar stars. Dad joined me, handing over a fresh drone rotor etched with the day's date. "Souvenir," he said. "For the wall." I turned it in my hands, plastic warm from his grip. "Think the wall will hold all these?" I asked. Dad laughed, low and steady. "Build more walls, kid." Behind us, kids on sleeping bags tapped laptops, rewriting code by lantern light. Veterans swapped fire stories, each ending with a grin and a sigh. Chloe sketched tomorrow's flight grid on the back of a pizza box. Morales practiced names of local rivers so he could sound like he was born here. I looked at that ragtag army and felt the carbon fiber crown loosen, replaced by something lighter, faith in shared wings. Phoenix had started as my rebuttal to doubt. Now it was a doorway anyone could walk through, carrying tools I'd never imagined. Somewhere east, another spark was probably forming. That was the nature of both fire and opportunity, they travel. But I no longer feared the next map of red. Because I knew that when the call came, Voices from 3 states would answer in chorus, and the sky would bloom with creatures named after rivers, stars, and bold imaginations. And we would keep answering faster than the flames until the world ran out of ways to underestimate us. Dawn over Olympia smelled like wet cedar and diesel. We had chased the fires across 3 states, and at last the sky glowed gentle pink instead of angry orange. I stood on the Capitol steps, rotor grease under my nails, watching Timberwolf drift a farewell circle above the flags. Reporters wanted quotes, but I kept thinking about that moment on the ridge when Perseus II limped home and a kid's voice crackled, "Challenge accepted." Inside the rotunda, governors from California, Oregon, and Washington signed a compact that threads Phoenix into every wildfire playbook west of the Rockies. No marching band, no confetti, just pens scratching paper and tired people nodding like, "Finally." Chloe squeezed my shoulder. Morales flashed a thumbs up. Dad rested his battered helmet at my feet. A quiet benediction. When the ceremony ended, a park ranger handed me a small box. Inside lay a charred pine cone painted school bus yellow, tied with fishing line to a note. "Thanks for saving our forest. Someday I'll build a drone named after you." Signed, Maya's little cousin, age 9. I laughed, the kind that shakes loose exhaustion. Because that pine cone was more than a souvenir, it was a seed. And seeds, like sparks, travel farther than anyone plans. Back home, the wall in our hangar had run out of room. Dog tags, broken rotors, sign patches, pine cones. Every piece a reminder. This wasn't just a project, it was a movement stitched from soot, steel, and second chances. Mom started coming by every Thursday with banana bread and gossip from church. Chloe began teaching a weekend course called Leadership Under Fire, and Morales reluctantly agreed to be guest speaker at a local high school. Even Dad, who once grunted more than he spoke, wrote an op-ed titled "Let Them Fly First." As for me, I finally slept through the night. Not because the fires had stopped, but because I knew now, even if I stepped away, Phoenix would keep rising. The kids, the crews, the ones who used to watch from behind, now they led the charge. I recorded one last video. Just me, no graphics. I looked into the lens and said, they called me ordinary. And maybe I was. But ordinary isn't the opposite of heroic, it's the start of it. So build. Fly. Lead. And when the flames come, I smiled, answer faster than anyone thought you could. Then I hit upload. And I let go.